Welcome, Ralph, today to 1M1B and Future Leaders. You have been a big support right from the time we started working. So nice of
Yeah,
you to give us your time today. So
it's a pleasure to
just a
be here.
brief
Thank you.
introduction, of who we have here today. And I just feel like I'm in the company of rock stars all over today, including you, Ralph. We have some amazing people joining us today. This is the full agenda. So after your talk, we have Sujoy joining us. We have like a 2-hour talk going on. But let me give you a brief introduction on some of the projects, and you'll get to hear them. So we have mainly youth here who have been working with 1M1B since March and little later, and have been pretty unreasonable in working and creating impact in their communities, even during the lockdown mode. So these are people who have gone beyond their reasons and have impacted their community, of course, being safe, taking care of themselves and their families, but they have not let that sort of the pandemic situation stop them in contributing to the communities. So they have undergone a very rigorous program for the past few months, and now are in the stage where they would be learning storytelling, they would be learning pitching, they would be learning advocacy, and that's where we thought that we would invite you and share some experience. And I know I've been asking you some of those questions probably 1,000 times ever since I know you, but I think I would probably do that again today, especially on your journey in Pixar, Toy Stories, and of course, Alligator Planet.
Sure.
We also have today in the session some of the 1M1B instructors, faculty, mentors, and of course, friends who have been a great support in the program that we run here called Future Leaders. And they have been working individually with these young people and mentoring them and empowering them and supporting them so that they could execute their idea and launch it into the world. So that's what we have today. What we'll be doing today, Ralph, is we'll probably just kick off with a few questions, interactions, and I'll let you talk whatever you want to share with these young people. And then in the end, we have about 4 people who would be sharing with you their project and their ideas. And we've selected 4 of them based on their storytelling that they have done over the last 4 days. They have uploaded their videos on the 1M1B YouTube channel. So we saw whoever's got the best videos, views and engagements, they will be talking to you. There have been some students who've been pitching on Twitter and advocating on Twitter. They've got good Twitter traction. So we just made this like a fun competition where some of them would come and talk to you. And of course, I hope you get to meet them. And we would love to have you at the United Nations when we have our summit there, whenever things open up. So great, Ralph. Thank you again. And for the rest of you, just a quick introduction about Ralph beyond all this nice stuff that you see there, which all of you know. Ralph, you can Google him, and you can see all the stuff. And we've been talking about it last 2 weeks. But Ralph is a dear friend. Ralph and I met in 2011 when I was struggling in my job in Intel. And I was struggling in a nice way. One of the struggles that I was having was, like all of you are trying to influence, I was trying to influence a number of people to get on to entrepreneurship. Now, entrepreneurship is not unique, right? I mean, you hear all the fascinating stories about the Silicon Valley and the startup world and what India is doing. But I was struggling on youth entrepreneurship. And I was struggling to take the message of youth entrepreneurship to some of the countries which were in conflict. There were a lot of countries in the Middle East. I wanted to launch off the youth entrepreneurship program, similar to what we are doing here in Future Leaders, so that we can get out of the discussion that many young people get into. That is, government needs to give me a job. Somebody somewhere needs to do something for me, and they feel privileged. And one of the stuff that I was inspired was what if we give young people the tools to create their own jobs, create their own small business, and get out of the discussion of somebody's going to give me a job. What if the discussion is I can give a job and take care of myself and my families and my community? So startup is not about just creating the Facebooks and the Googles of the world. Startup is also a small store that you see down which is operated by a family, right? Where you might be buying your vegetables or you might be growing your groceries and essentials. So I was inspired with that idea, but many young people don't think entrepreneurship is for them. And that's where Ralph and I started working on creating an animation, which we launched, which helped me do my job better. And that animated video really went viral. It got translated into Arabic, Spanish, Hindi, of course, and many other languages, and was used to convey to these young people what they should be doing. So Ralph and I got that opportunity, and that's where I sort of closely worked with Ralph. And later, when I was in my last phase at Intel, I was in this program called Make It Wearable, which was launching the high-tech, high-growth startups into the Silicon Valley and at the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas. And that's where Ralph and I worked together again and, made this nice book. So this is all produced by Ralph, and it is not an ordinary book, by the way. It is a book which is very nicely designed inside. So probably I'll show you when we meet. It is a fascinating book which uses a lot of graphics, a lot of different ways to tell the story on how a big organization like Intel at that point and young entrepreneurs can work together to really create a big impact. So Ralph and I have been working together for a while, and after that, of course, I left Intel and started 1M, 1B, and here, like, I've been in touch with Ralph. But Ralph, so nice of you to be here and talking to us today.
Manav, it's great to be here. And let me add something. In addition to my experience as a filmmaker, I'm also a mentor for 5 years now at Berkeley's Haas Business School in a course teaching the lean startup entrepreneurship method to business school students. I've also shot a lot of video that's been used to help teach lean startup, and exactly the techniques that you are using with your students here at 1M, 1B are very similar to what's being taught to these grad students, what's being taught to medical professionals, what's being taught at the National Institute of Health and the National Science Foundation here in the United States. These are becoming universal techniques for entrepreneurs. And as you say, it doesn't matter whether you're starting a small business or a very large business. These are tools and techniques that can be used. I spent some of my time today looking at the videos that your students have done at 1M, 1B, your future leaders. And I'm very impressed because they are using the same terminology, the same techniques that we are teaching graduate school students about pivoting, about iterating, about talking to as many potential customers as possible. And these are the same techniques that are being taught across the country today in business schools. So it's very appropriate, and they're very powerful tools.
Great. Thanks, Ralph, for going through some of the videos. I can ask you which one was your favorite later, but let's dive in, Ralph. So we are very interested to know about your career, and we'll also open it up to questions. We want all these young people to ask you questions, and probably I'll shut up after some time. But just let me get rolling, Ralph. I mean, we would love to hear your career and how you started, how you got into filmmaking, and of course, how did Pixar and Toy Story happen?
Well, I'll make it as short as possible, although it's a 25-year story. I'll try to do it in about 2 minutes. When I went to high school, I had some friends who, one of whom had a camera, a film camera. This was way back when everything was shot on film. And after school, we would get together and we'd make some silly films together. But each film became better than the last. And we realized that there was a great deal of power in this method of making films. When I got to university at Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, they asked me if I wanted to major in English literature or something along those lines. And it didn't interest me very much. So I explained to them that I wanted to be a filmmaker. And they said, oh, in that case, we have a program where you can write your own major. You can decide what courses you want to take. And I started doing that. And in the course of it, I worked at a number of television stations in the city during the summertime and working on editing local news film and that sort of thing. And on my way to work, I would read this one book called Expanded Cinema. It was about the changes in movie making in the 1960s and 70s. And there was a discussion of a new technique called computer animation, something that was brand new. Nobody had, very few people had worked with it before. And I thought to myself, here I am at a university filled with engineers and computers, I know nothing about this. So I discovered that one of the best career building traits I acquired there at the university was talking to people and finding my way to where I could do the things that interested me. And before long, I had found my way down to the computer science department, where I met a professor who had just started there. He had come from Stanford, and his name is Raj Reddy. He is of Indian descent. He was born in India. And Raj and I started talking, and he allowed me, an undergraduate, to work with the graduate student computer systems, which was very good. Because at that time, the undergraduates worked with punch cards, which were impossible from my point of view to work with. They were very frustrating and very slow. And they had the first, the graduate students had the first computer terminals and the ability to display images on computers. And then one day he and I were talking, and he said, you know, I need money to fund my research in artificial intelligence. And you make films. If you made films about my research, we could have a wonderful relationship together where I could raise money doing this. And so I started making films for him. And I continued, when I finished my undergraduate job, I continued as a graduate student with him as my advisor. And then when I left there, I got a job at a research lab in Long Island that was doing research in computer animation and making computer animation. And about 6 months after I arrived there, I got a call from someone at George Lucas's company, Lucasfilm, who said, we want to start a computer research group, and we understand that you know all about how to do this. I was a brand new guy out of graduate school. I knew nothing about it, or I knew a little bit about it compared to the people I worked with who knew a lot more. And I said, finally, how did you get my name? And he said, well, you know, we don't know anything about computers at Lucasfilm. We've made Star Wars, but we only one episode of it, and it doesn't really use computers that much. However, we called around, and we were told to talk to a professor at Carnegie Mellon named Raj Reddy, and he gave us your name. And so one thing led to another, and by 1980, I started a job at Lucasfilm, doing research into video editing, and other people were working on digital sound, others were working in computer graphics. And after I completed a project there, I moved over because I really wanted to make films. I started working with the computer animation group, and we spun off and formed Pixar in 1986. And in 1989, we won an Academy Award for our short film Luxo Jr., directed by John Lasseter. And in 1990, Disney, who already knew us very well, John had been a Disney animator, Disney called us up and said, you guys obviously know something about this computer animation that we don't. Would you be interested in making a feature film? Well, from the time that I left graduate school, I was working with people who all had the same dream, that one day we would make a feature-length movie using computer animation. And from 1990 to 1995, we worked on our first film, Toy Story. And we knew at the time that we were hopefully going to create a milestone in animation and a milestone in filmmaking. But there were many other people at the time who were working on similar ideas, making a feature-length film. Unfortunately for us, we decided it wasn't important to be first, but it was important to do it well. In the end, none of these other projects came to the theaters. They all failed in one form or another, but our dream and our vision of making this feature-length film was realized. And along with great storytelling, we also had a great new technique to show audiences, and that became incredibly popular. I was at Pixar from 1986 until 1997. I started working on Toy Story 2, but it was around that time that this new thing called the internet came about. And I thought, there's got to be some interesting opportunities to tell stories on the internet, and they're not happening at Pixar. Much as I love Pixar and much as it was a great place to be, very creative environment, it was time to move on. And I ended up around 2000 starting to work at Electronic Arts, the video game company. And we worked on a very revolutionary idea for telling a story using the internet as a storytelling medium, where email, streaming video, text messages, bots and other online conversations, as well as websites that we would build, were all part of the story that we were weaving together. And so it's very interesting to work in multiple media in this nature. We released our game in July of 2001, and the game was about government conspiracies. Well, in September 2001, the world changed. And the world changed in a way that it was no longer fun and games to talk about conspiracies after the attacks on September 11th here in the United States. And so, unfortunately, the game closed down. I worked at Electronic Arts for another 8 or 10 months. And I left there and ran into some old animation friends. And we started a small studio called Alligator Planet in San Francisco. And that's where I still work today. And we do everything and anything about images and animation. We do books like Hypershift. We have produced stamps for the US Post Office. We've done feature-length films, one of which I made with a studio in Mumbai. And we have made television series and other things. So it's a variety of things. Today we do a lot of educational and explainer videos. And I also do a lot of videos on lean startup. So that's how my career has taken me through various stages. All the time it's about telling stories, and all the time it's about bringing new ideas to people that engage them.
So Ralph, thank you so much. That every time I hear you, it's always like as if I'm hearing it for the first time. So, so it's great. Thank you for sharing your journey. One question I have is, they say when you want to tell a story, tell it as if you're telling to your grandma, right? Or tell it as if you're telling to a 5-year-old, right? And that's what something that we also share with our future leaders, that when you're telling your story or when you're pitching, tell it to a younger audience. So how would you tell it to a younger audience? And you really mastered how to tell it.
Yes, but I tell you, you'll see in the little slide deck I've prepared, the first thing when people come to us at Alligator Planet and ask us to make a film that explains an idea, the first question we ask them is, who is your audience? If you don't know who the audience is, you don't know whether you're speaking to your grandma or if you're speaking to a 5-year-old. And people ask us all the time when we made Toy Story, who is your audience? And we said, honestly, our audience is ourselves. If we can make ourselves laugh, if we can entertain ourselves, then we can entertain anybody. Yes, we imagined probably a 14-year-old sitting in the audience watching the film, but in the end, we figured if it was funny to us, it would be funny to that 14-year-old and others of other ages as well. And in fact, the biggest compliment we got was from an executive at Disney when we were in the final stages of making the film. We test the film in front of an audience, and we walked out of the test screening, and this fellow turned to me and he said, at Disney Animation, we believe that we can make films that entertain audiences of all ages, but we've lost that magic. And you at Pixar, you have really figured out how to reinvent that with this film. And I think that's one of the reasons why Disney and Pixar ultimately came together, is that they both understood the need for that kind of storytelling and for that kind of general audience appeal. But when you're making a film about an entrepreneurial effort, it's a bit different. And you really want to think about who your audience is and be very clear about that.
Got it. More about Pixar, Ralph. Can you tell us how that came together and how you sold that and what happened? What was the Pixar journey like?
Well, the Pixar journey was interesting because, first of all, we were working for a wonderful guy, George Lucas. But as much of a visionary as he is, he didn't always appreciate what was coming out of our computer research group. And we were inventing techniques and technologies that are still used today. For instance, if any of your students have ever used Photoshop or any video editing software, they've probably come across the notion of transparency in an image called the alpha channel. The alpha channel came out of research we did at Lucasfilm. And it was a technique that's been adopted by everybody for doing compositing, for layering different images together in a way to show what a transparent part of an image is. So it became clear that we needed to move on. It also became clear that our dream of making a full-length film was not going to happen at Lucasfilm. And it was, it's understandable. There was really one man running the company, and there was one director, and he made his films, and that man was George Lucas. He was not interested at that time in animated films. So for a variety of reasons, we felt it was time to move on. What we had done there was we had created, ironically, a piece of computer hardware that was good at doing visual effects for movies. And it was good at layering lots of images together. and manipulating them. And the fellow who was running that project was looking for a name for it. He said, you know, images are made of pixels. And this is a machine that operates on it, manipulates pixels. So it should be a pix something or other, a pix, you know, and he thought, you know, in Spanish, a lot of verbs end in AR, the letters AR. So maybe we'll call it a Pixar computer that this piece of hardware will be. And that's how the name was born. When it became time for us to leave, we were looking for someone who could help fund the company and who would be interested in the technology that we had. And Lucasfilm was willing to let us take this hardware technology with us. In the end, the person that we found who was most interested was Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs had recently left Apple in 1984, 85, and he was looking to start a new company and build a new kind of computer. That company ultimately was called Next, the Next Computer Company. And when he saw the technology that we had in a rather large box, he realized that that could be miniaturized and put into perhaps one computer card that would go into his new computer. So he negotiated with Lucasfilm, and ultimately he purchased the rights to the technology, and we moved into a new company called Pixar, where we sold the Pixar image computer. That's this piece of hardware that we had designed. But on the side of the company, we had a small team of 5 or 6 people, including myself, who were making animated films. And these short animated films started getting a lot of attention. And as I mentioned, one of them, we were very fortunate, won an Academy Award in 1986, Luxo Jr. And we went on from there to make more short films. And then ultimately, Disney, who was buying our computer hardware, asked us to make the feature film that became Toy Story. Meanwhile, the computer hardware side of the business did not do so well, but a lot of the software was successful. One of those pieces of software is called RenderMan, and is still used today by lots of people for computing images, for visual effects in feature films, to medical imaging, to all sorts of things. And but what happened is the computer equipment side of the business shrank, and our animation team grew and grew. We started with 5 people. When I left Pixar, we were 350 people doing animation, and today there are over 1,000 people at Pixar, of course, many years later. By the way, this year is the 25th anniversary of the release of Toy Story in November of 1995. So it's a signature year this year.
Wow, great to hear. Ralph, Steve Jobs, how was it working with him?
Well, Steve was a visionary guy, and you could enter into a conversation with Steve, and you could realize, and something that is very helpful for entrepreneurs to think about. Steve never held on to an idea or belief for very long if he found that there was evidence that it wasn't viable. So I don't know if you've talked to your future leaders about business models, but you might think of someone as Steve Jobs. His real strength was in marketing and understanding the pulse of what people wanted or what they might want in terms of technology. And so he would build a business model in his mind of how some new technique or technology would work. But if he was presented with enough information that showed that it didn't work, he never held on to it very long. He was very eager to switch to something else if he found something new. So, the notion that he often said he never spoke to people about what they wanted, he just knew what it was, isn't really true. He was listening all the time to what people were suggesting. He was listening and thinking all the time about the model that he had in his head of what a business idea might be like. And he was very eager, when presented with facts that showed that it should be different than what he was thinking, to switch from that to some other new approach.
And that skill itself is so important, right? Just to listen to customers and pivot and switch if you think
Right.
it's not working, and not hold the idea too long to your chest.
And what's funny, you've met Steve Blank, as you know. By an odd coincidence, Steve Blank was actually a consultant at Pixar when we were a very young company in the marketing of our computer hardware. And after being in the class in Lean Startup with him, he looked at me one day and he said, "So what do you think of this Lean Startup idea? It's brilliant, isn't it?" Or something like that. And I said, "Steve, congratulations. but you have reinvented what everybody in animation has known for 100 years. And that is, in animation, we come up with an idea for a story. We make little drawings of it into what we call a storyboard. And we then tell that story picture by picture to ourselves or to our families. And then we might make a small little film of these little drawings and we show them to people. And every time we get feedback on what works and what doesn't work. And by doing that, we iterate, we pivot on our story endlessly. So I said, congratulations, Steve. You have rediscovered what we have been doing in animation for 100 years. And in fact, even as I mentioned to you, the story of doing a test screening of Toy Story in front of an audience, the film was 95% complete. But we walked away from those screenings with ideas about where we heard the audience being engaged and where we heard them fidgeting in their seats and not comfortable. And we could tell where the movie was working well and where we had to make changes. And we made those changes in the last 3-4 months of making the film. They were pretty substantial changes and they made the film that much better. So we were constantly getting feedback and constantly listening to what the audience was thinking.
Thanks, Ralph. And one sentence you just said sort of sticks on, which is it's not important to be first, but it's important to do well. I'll take that away. I think that's a very, very important lesson from what you shared about Toy Story.
We had seen a lot of examples of animation that were not done very well. And we thought, if we're going to establish a standard for this new kind of technique, we should make it really good so that others who follow have to really jump over a very high hurdle to match or to exceed what we have done.
Right. Yeah. Okay, good. Let's open it up to questions. And I know, Ralph, you have something, you want to show something as well, but.
Sure, I thought I'd give a little talk about stories and storytelling for entrepreneurs, which is something that I give at the course at Berkeley to teach entrepreneurs how to tell their story.
Good. So we'll just open it up for a few questions and then get Ralph into sharing. So let's open it up. We've been talking for a long time now. So what are the questions and who would like to ask? Any questions? Just type in on your chat. Any questions you have for Ralph? Just keep on typing. Okay, so Ralph, as students start warming up, anybody wants to go before I take it over again? I don't see any question right now on the chat. Okay, Arjun, you have a question. Okay. Arjun, would you like to unmute yourself and ask?
Sure. So my question is, while thinking of a movie to do an animated movie, why did you only come up with the idea of doing a movie with toys? Why not something else?
Right. So, we knew when we went to make Toy Story that we were going to face a number of technical challenges. And we had made a film previously. In fact, the one that won Luxor Jr. was nominated for an Academy Award. The one that won the Academy Award in 1989 was a film called Tin Toy. And if you look online, I'm sure you'll find a copy of it. Tin Toy was about a little wind-up toy who encounters a baby, a human baby. Doing the human baby almost killed us. Doing the toy was relatively easy. And so as John Lasseter thought about a topic for a movie, we thought about why not feature more toys and very few people. And if you look at Toy Story today, there are very few minutes of the film that really have people in them. Most of the film is about the toys. Toys were easier to model and build and render and animate at that time in computer animation. The techniques and technology have evolved enormously since then. But we figured we could tell a good story with toys. And in fact, when Disney called us and asked us to, if we wanted to make a film, they said, of course, the first step is you come down and give us an idea for what your film will be about. And so John Lasseter and his team thought about it, and they came up with a story that's very similar to many other films. There are a number of films that we call buddy pictures, where two people are forced to come together, and yet they're very different from each other. I'm sure there are examples of that in Bollywood films. I only have a small knowledge of Bollywood movies. But in the US, it goes back to the 1950s, a film called The Defiant Ones, where two men, one white and one black, escape from prison, and they are literally chained together and must figure out how to get along in spite of all their differences. There was a film called Midnight Run later on. There was a film called 48 Hours with Eddie Murphy, similar movie. Two people forced together under circumstances. They can't stand each other, but if they don't work together, they will not survive. Thelma and Louise, another famous American film. Two women who go off on a road trip, something bad happens, and they're very different types of personalities, but they must work together. So we pitched a story idea, and it turned out that the man who ran Disney at the time, Jeffrey Katzenberg, happened to be his favorite type of story. And so we got the approval and we went ahead and started making the film.
Okay, thank you.
Toys were technically easy to do at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Yuvraj, you're next.
What were the biggest problems you faced at Pixar?
You know, one problem for an entrepreneur is at some point you have to find partnerships with other people and other companies. So we formed a partnership with Disney. But we were a tiny company of 50, 60 people when we started making the film. And we grew to 120 people by the time we finished the film. Disney is a huge company with thousands of employees and all kinds of methods and procedures that they want to do, especially when they make their animated films. And here we are trying to make a film like no other that has been made before. And so we endlessly had to educate Disney as much as they were educating us about the techniques and technology. I'll give you an example that you'll all laugh about. We would go and we would show our storyboard drawings cut together as a video to the studio. We would fly down to Los Angeles. We were in San Francisco. We'd fly to Los Angeles and show them this. And the people at Disney said, the only way that you can show this material is by presenting it on 35 millimeter film in a projector. And we said, but a projector has nothing to do with the way we make our film. Our film is made on a computer. We'll bring a videotape because that's what our computer spits out when we want to show it. No, 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 no. The way we do it at Disney, you have to make it on film. So we went and we showed it on film one time. It took us hours and hours to do and wasted a lot of time. And meanwhile, in the room that we were screening the film, I noticed that there was a videotape player in the corner and that there was a controller that allowed Mr. Katzenberg to roll back and forth from his seat in the theater. And so I asked, you know, after all that, I said, I see you have the arrangement, the equipment for this. Why don't we do that next time? He said, oh, Jeffrey doesn't like that. He will not like it. Next time we came down with videotape, he loved it. We had educated them on a whole new way of thinking about making their films. And so we had many problems like that of educating them, but in return, we learned a tremendous amount from Disney about how they made their films. And that helped us enormously.
Thanks, Ralph. Okay, Ananya, say it. You are next.
Hi. So I was wondering, what were some of the pivots you made while creating Toy Story, like if there were any?
There were only about 1 million pivots making Toy Story. I will break them down into two categories. There were creative pivots in the storytelling that we were doing, and there were technological pivots in the way in which we made the film. So the creative pivots were, we originally, as I said, we proposed the story idea to Disney, and I have somewhere in my files a 2-page summary of this story about two toys that can't get along, and in the end, with a big car chase, they end up getting along, they work together, and they succeed. That was the idea that Disney loved. But when it came to making the film, there were a lot of criticisms from Disney and a lot of suggestions, and we were following them, and ultimately, we got to a point where Buzz and Woody were the most awful people you've ever met. They were just hateful, argumentative, mean-spirited characters. We had drifted far away from what our original idea for the story was. And in fact, Disney recognized this and they said, you know, you have to stop work on the film until you get the story worked out. So we had to make a huge pivot to get back to where we wanted to go. And on the technology side, we, and by the way, in stopping work on the film, we were all frightened that, in fact, the film would never be made because Disney viewed this as a big experiment. They were not certain that this would be successful. On the technology side, we had to build an entire production line, like manufacturing, if you will, for making the film. We'd never, we'd made lots of television commercials and short films, but we never made anything of this scale and size before. And so my co-producer, Bonnie Arnold, and I, and our production team, every day, we're looking at every aspect of what we were doing and coming up with new ideas and new techniques for how to refine or improve or speed up or make more efficient that part of the process. And it wasn't that we started at the beginning of the film and worked our way to the end. We would work our way to the end and then realize there was another problem at the beginning of the production, and we'd have to go back all the way through again from beginning to end and revise one more time, and keep doing it over and over until the film could be done. So we were constantly pivoting both technically and creatively.
Thank you.
Okay, Madhav, you're next.
Hi. As someone who is a producer, creative professional, business person, could you talk a little bit about what success has meant to you over the years, and maybe how that has changed as the field and scope of your work has expanded, and how you identify what really matters in a project?
The last part of the question is the most easy to answer. What matters in a project is what drives me in terms of my passion to tell stories and make films. And right now, in fact, I'm working with an old friend of mine who is a computer music composer. And he has composed a piece of music to a poem that I was very moved by. And he and I started talking, and he said he would like to have animation accompany it. And so we are now trying to work on making this film, if at all possible, for be an independent film. We have no budget, we have no finances to do it. We'll have to raise money and get it done. So passion is what drives it. The earlier part of your question is, what does success mean? Success means that I can pick and choose the projects I want to work on with more freedom. But it also is the same, for me as a producer, the job is the same every day. How can I get the project from where I am now to where we can complete it within the requirements of the budget, the schedule, and the creative passion of the people working on it? Because my job is to help a director make the best possible film that he or she can make. I have to worry about getting it done on time, and I have to worry about making sure that it is done for the amount of money that is available. It's a constant tension, but it's an interesting puzzle to solve every time I work on these things.
Thank you so much.
Great, Nishant, you're next.
Yes, so I just wanted to know, like according to your experience, what kind of animations or videos do people usually prefer? Animation is a huge field. Thanks for the question, Nishant.
There are so many techniques in animation. My partner is a fellow named Eli Noyes. He created an animation back in the 1960s using clay, and he was nominated for an Academy Award for this film. Today, you can make films with computers. You can make films with drawings. You can make films with sand. You can make films with puppet characters. You can make a film using your hand to create a character on screen and project shadows onto a wall. So animation, what fascinates me about animation is two things. One, you can create animation with almost any technique you can imagine. And the second is you can create a world in a story that nobody else has ever seen before. Because in animation, there are no rules, right? We've all seen animated films where characters fly. We've all seen animated films where characters are very realistic. There are no rules in animation except that you be consistent with the story that you are telling. So you have enormous control. You don't have to deal with the factors of shooting live action films where a plane flies by in the middle of a critical scene that you're shooting outdoors. And it's supposed to be a film that took place in the 15th century. So animation has a lot more control, a lot more variation, and a lot more creative opportunity.
Okay, thank you. And also, did you ever feel you wanted to quit animation because something didn't work in the beginning? If yes, how did you deal with it?
You're talking about my experience every day making animation. There are days that are very frustrating and there are days that are very rewarding. The rewarding days are always better than the days that are frustrating, and so we keep on doing it. But that is the same with any creative job. And what I love is the opportunity to create. And what I love about my job as a producer is that every day my job is a little bit different. So it's never the same work every day. Some days where I'm looking at a script, some days we're editing video or storyboards, other days we're doing music or sound effects. It's always different and it's always fascinating to me. So the good things are way better than some of the bad things that happen.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Ayush, you're next.
Hello. So my
Hello,
question
Ayush.
was, so obviously, as you mentioned earlier, video games have become this amazing way of creative storytelling, as well as today, we have so many video games with such powerful computer animations as well. So you're given your experience at Electronic Arts. What do you think about video games becoming this medium for, say, people like us, young future leaders, to kind of share our ideas and express what we hope to communicate to people through video games or something? Yeah.
Sure. No, I'm actually surprised. When I joined Electronic Arts, the fellow who was running the project I work on, the project was called Majestic. And the idea was to tell a story with video games. And up on the wall in the room that we worked, he had a sentence written down, which was, I want to create a video game that can make you cry. And we very often don't see enough in video games that really express the emotion and the drama that we see in films. And so that for us is a bit of was a challenge then. And I think it's still, I'm surprised that more has not been done to date with video games that really express emotion. There are a lot of reasons why that doesn't work that we can't get into right now, but it's still an area where video games, I think, have not succeeded, but perhaps you are better versed in them than I am. I must say I'm not a big gamer. And so, I have yet to see examples of video games that do that, but I hope that in the future they will be as expressive and immersive as possible, and also have the emotion that will really engage people.
I see. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Ralph, so we have, we let you share your screen because there are a lot of questions coming in now. So I think everybody's got started.
Okay, well, maybe we'll finish some more later on.
Yes.
Let's see if I can pull this off here. So I'm going to share my screen with this one. And so what I want, do you see this?
Yes.
Are you seeing my screen? Very good.
Yes. Yeah.
So what I wanted to talk about today was why stories matter, because I think, in fact, the last question about video games is very appropriate to this, which is why are stories so important to us? I mean, there's many other ways to convey information. Why should they be through stories? And the answer in part is that we are actually addicted to stories. And if you think about it, when we go to sleep at night, we imagine stories. We have dreams that are effectively stories. And we are constantly thinking about stories, and stories move us. Stories give us emotions. Stories give us models for how we want to be. When people asked us, why is Toy Story meaningful? We said, well, because everybody has the dilemma of how loyal they need to be to a friend. And whether that friend is a toy or a person, we have to deal with these issues in our own lives. By using toys to tell the story, we can go outside of ourselves and think of the story in a different way. So when we read nonfiction, as this man says in a very interesting book called The Storytelling Animal, which is what we are, he says, when we read nonfiction, when we read the newspaper, when we read textbooks, we are putting something between ourselves and the subject matter. But when we're absorbed in a story, when we're watching a movie that has great characters, when we're in the middle of a video game where we're very engaged, we drop that guard and we are moved by the process, the story itself of what we're doing. So the challenge as entrepreneurs is to tell a story that actually can move us in a very dramatic way, because facts only take us so far. And we really need emotion to carry it. Well, how can we tell stories as entrepreneurs that move us? Well, I watched some of the videos that you've created, and I think you have a good idea of how to do that already. which is to show us people who are involved in the activity that you're trying to solve a problem for. And by showing their problems and showing solutions, you can begin to construct a story that will move people to think about how they might do things differently. So what is it? We have facts and we have feelings, and somewhere in the middle where they overlap, we can create stories that merge the two together. That's what, as an entrepreneur, we really are searching for. So David Reamer, who teaches actually storytelling at the Haas Business School at Berkeley, says that stories need characters just as products need customers. So stories and characters are linked just as products and customers are. Why? Because customers, or the people who you are providing a service to, are looking to solve a problem that emotionally affects their lives. And by providing them with a solution, you are solving not only a problem for them, but you're resolving the emotional concern that they have. This is a little video, but I think it will not play, the sound will not play, so I'm going to skip over it. But Jack Dorsey, who is the founder of Twitter and Square, says that when they are thinking about how to design a product, they write a story about somebody who would use the product and how it affects their lives every day. And if that story is compelling, then they know that they have a good idea for the product or the feature that they are creating. And if they can't relate that story to someone who is using it, then the product is not serving the purpose. In lean startup world, we call this product market fit. We want to create products who have values that address the needs of the people who are going to use them. So how to tell your story? Well, I mentioned earlier, the first thing you want to do is think about who's your audience. And that can vary at different times. Sometimes it's your customers. Sometimes it's people who are going to give you money. Sometimes it's people who are going to work closely with you in creating the product. And sometimes it's people who will provide you with resources or other things beyond money that make it essential, that are essential for you to succeed in creating what you're doing. So I've seen in some of your videos that you are already engaging with people, even during COVID, where it's very difficult to do that. But you're engaging with people who want to use this product, and you're trying to find a way, find the right key that unlocks the lock of what their needs are. When you tell your story, you want to be very careful that you are telling the story that suits the audience you're talking to. Now, sometimes you're telling a story to an audience that consists of more than one of these groups. And in that case, you have to figure out a story that is universal to all of them, or where different parts of the story apply to each of them. So this sounds a little abstract. Let me just say that there's a very standard way that many people tell a story, and that you've heard it many times in lectures or in speeches. People say, this is a topic I want to tell you about. Now I'm going to give you more detail about that topic. And, oh, by the way, just to finish up, here's what I just told you. Well, that's certainly one way in 3 parts to tell a story, but there are other good ways. And we can learn a lot about this, what we call in filmmaking, we call story structure. And we can learn about this from the way we make movies. And the way we make movies is, first of all, a story must have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Well, that's a very simple way of looking at what a story is. But in traditional storytelling, we have a name for this. In fact, it came out of from Greece in the 2,000 years ago. Aristotle called this storytelling in 3 acts. Every movie, or almost every movie, many plays that you see all have 3-act structures. So not just here's the topic, here's more detail, and here's a summary, but here's a problem that our hero is going to confront that's going to put that hero onto a mission or a journey. Now the hero is going to overcome obstacles along the way. We call that Act 2. And usually this is the longest part of the story, where there are successive problems and obstacles that the hero has to overcome. And then in Act 3, the hero finally devises a strategy, a solution to the problem, and they execute it, and they either succeed or sometimes they do not succeed, sometimes they fail. But all of those are the key parts of traditional storytelling. So how can an entrepreneur harness these same ideas? Well, first of all, if I had to graph that story, it would look like this. We have an introduction, That's Act 1. It puts us onto a path of rising action and stakes, conflicts that get higher, obstacles that we have to cross all along the way. And we ultimately come to a moment of crisis in Act 3 that leads to a solution and to falling action resolution. If you think about a film like Star Wars, the first A New Hope, Episode 4, Luke Skywalker loses his uncle and aunt. So a crisis occurs that sets him off on a journey. He meets a mysterious man named Obi-Wan Kenobi, and before he knows it, he's off into a series of adventures that take him across the galaxy, and he's learning new skills along the way. He's becoming a Jedi. And in the course of that, he has to learn a great deal. In fact, he spends at least 2 more movies learning all these things. And finally, he gets to a point near the end of the film where a crisis occurs where they have to go and destroy the Death Star, and they succeed. And at the end, they all celebrate. That's the falling action at the end of the story. So how can entrepreneurs use this same idea? The hero having Act 1 of a problem, Act 2 of obstacles, and Act 3 of having a strategy. Well, if you have a venture or a business idea, your 3-act story is you recognize a problem. Very similar, you are the hero of your own story. You recognize a problem that needs to be solved, that you believe needs to be solved. You will confront obstacles along the way to solve that problem and revising it and revolving it as you go along, what we now call pivoting. So this is the biggest part of the process, the constant revision and changing and refining and honing, and it doesn't stop at any one time. Just like during Toy Story, we never stopped changing how we made the film. We were constantly working on improving it from the very beginning to the very end. And finally, you, as the hero of your own story, you come up with a winning strategy or solution that you can then bring as a service or a product out to the world. So that's a way that we instruct a lot of entrepreneurs on how to tell their story. And it really helps in making, and I see it in many of the videos that I watched today, that you already are embodying this idea. What is the problem you're trying to solve? What are the obstacles you've crossed along the way that you've learned from that allowed you to pivot and improve on it? And what is the strategy that helped you win? There's another way to think about this that a friend of mine, when I explained this to her, she said, well, actually, I work in the world of nonprofits. We're NGOs. We're constantly trying to raise money. We'll constantly have new ideas for how to improve the world. And when we go out and we talk to people, there are 3 basic ideas that we summarize as follows. The first one is what? The second one is what now? And the third one, what next? In other words, people want to know what we are, what we're currently doing, and with their help, what we could do next to improve what we're doing and make it better. And these are the 3 ideas that motivate them in the world of nonprofits. I think you could say the same for companies that want to earn a profit. I don't think it's any different. When you're talking to your audience, you want to engage them in your story. And whether it's talking about your problems or your obstacles, or talking about where your plans are for the future, these are thinking about stories in 3 parts is a very powerful way to tell your stories. So think about that as you continue down your path of building your ideas and thinking about how you communicate those ideas to people. Use emotion, use facts, use your learning and your personality to engage people, and you'll find that you'll be very successful in doing this. That's my brief lesson for the night.
Thanks, Ralph. And it would be, I know we've been sort of in early stages of this discussion, but it would be lovely if you can help us make a short documentaries of some of these top students who do amazing work in the next 3 months.
Sure. Well, the films that they're making already are very powerful. You don't need me to make documentaries for them when they're doing such a good job already. Many of those films are very powerful. They could use a little editing, they could use a little tightening, but they're very compelling already because they're being told out of their own voices, and that's the best kind of filmmaking to do.
Got it. Perfect, Ralph. So we'll have some presentations now for you. So there are some students who have done exceedingly well in promoting their story. And it's just not about storytelling, it's about also promoting your story so that people see that and notice you. But there are some students who've got like more than 1,000 views in the last 5 days, and they've been promoting their story, and we've just taken the top.
Well, I noticed that several, that they're, the dates on them were all very recent, and yet I saw that some were getting a lot of views. That's great.
Got it. So Varsha, if you can just, share your screen and let's have some of the stories.
Great.
So Arjun, why don't you tell your story?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. My name is Arjun, and as you can see, this is my project. It's called Let's Change Lives. So I've been living in the same society for the past 16 years, and I've got the chance to talk to some of the security guards in my apartments, and I've realized over the years talking to them that they do face a lot of stress that can range from occupational to organizational stress. So I decided, why not solve this problem of mental health that they already face? So I came up with an initial problem statement without doing much of research of how can we help security personnel in Gurugram cope with stress during the COVID-19 pandemic to prevent mental breakdowns. Then I, just like Toy Story, 1.5 years was spent just scripting the movie. I decided to go down, do some interviews, and let's see if that really is the problem still, and how can I narrow down on the problem. And some of the biggest insight from the interviews were that the reasons of stress were long working hours, no sick leaves, and health worries of themselves contracting the disease. And the biggest one was the concern for their children's education and future, because all of their children are in government schools and no online education going on. They fear that their children would end up doing menial jobs in the future. So I decided to change my problem statement and narrowed down on this issue and came up with another problem statement of how can we help the children from unprivileged sections of society in Gurugram get access to education during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, I did not only focus on the children of security guards, I took this project to another level by focusing on the unprivileged sections in my society. So the implementation plan was like weekly in-person classes and then online classes on Zoom. These pictures are from one of the sessions that I conducted. We currently have 12 children that we're focusing on and around 8 volunteers as well. Now, we also plan to do fundraisers to provide old smartphones and tablets and internet connections to these children and give them access to platforms like Khan Academy for online learning. Also, by October 2020, I expect at least 30 children to be impacted by this program. And by January 2021, we hope to double the number to 60. It's been a great experience teaching these children, and I am very excited to keep continuing with it. And I hope everything goes well with, and with the support of 1M1B, I think I can do this. Yeah, thank you.
So Arjun, very good. And you've really learned the lesson about talking to people and learning from them. And I assume you know, but just to make it clear, the best way to interview people is not to tell them what you are doing or what you are thinking, but to ask them how they interact with the world. What is just like Jack Dorsey was saying is, what is the customer story? What are the problems that they have? What are what we call the pains that they have to deal with in pursuing their life? And you very wisely discerned that while they were under a lot of stress at their work, their biggest concern was their children. So congratulations, that's a very powerful story and very well done. And as you start talking to fundraisers, think about the what now and what next structure of that story to gain fundraisers interest and hopefully to have success in raising money. Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Himaja. So Himaja got 1.7 thousand views in 4 days.
Nice,
Himaja,
nice.
Hi everyone, my name is Himaja Rangisetti. I'm a 10th grader from Chirk International School and a 1M1B feature leader. My project's poem aims to reduce loneliness and depression amongst the elderly by helping them rediscover their passion. The reason I chose to take on this initiative is because of my grandmother. I grew up around her. When I was younger, I used to spend a lot of time with her, learning how to knit, listening to her tell me stories, and we used to have a lot of fun together. But as I grew older, I couldn't spend as much time as I used to with her, due to which she grew lonely and longed for company. She would sit in front of the TV all day long. When I was introduced to the One-on-One Be Future Leaders program, I knew this was what I wanted to work on. The program gave me the opportunity to do something for my grandmother and many other senior citizens like her. I saw how happy my grandmother felt when she made her favorite recipe and was appreciated for it. When she did something she loved, she didn't feel lonely anymore, and that's what motivated me. Swayam is a platform that would engage senior citizens by rediscovering their passion, be it cooking, gardening, or handicrafts. The idea is to use their skills to make products out of whatever they're passionate about and sell them directly to customers through an online website and stores. Here's how Swayam works. First, we get in touch with senior citizens who are interested. Through common conversations, we discover their talent and figure out what they're passionate about. We then decide on which product to do together and provide them with all necessary materials, thus embarking on a special journey. As of now, we have 5 senior citizens actively involved, with many more interested. We started with 3 products, and I'm happy to announce that they launched this week. Through Swayam, I hope to bring a change in the daily lives of seniors, a smile to their face and the satisfaction of doing something for themselves at that age. I aim to prove to them that age is just a number and it's never too late.
Himaja, very nice. Hijama, pardon me. Himaja, sorry. You know, what's interesting about this is that you found a very difficult problem during this pandemic is finding a way to engage people who are older who may not have great internet skills. And I'm wondering how you managed to get around that problem, because that's very powerful.
At first, I wanted to create a platform where we conduct community workshops for them, and this was through online. That's when I realized that these people didn't know how to didn't have access to these online platforms, or didn't know how to use them. So at first, I just started right now with people I know or people around my community, but later I want to expand to old age homes and people who are in more dire need of.
That's wonderful, because the one thing also during this pandemic that we all find, and it's as true here in the US, just as what Arjun was talking about and what you are proposing, is that what people really crave is interacting with each other, having social engagement with each other, whether it's children or older adults. And so anything that you can do to help that or give them a sense of purpose, which I think is what you are doing, is incredibly valuable. Thank you. That's a great story. And I like very much the way you started the story by talking about your grandmother. So there's a personal connection to the story that made your role in it much more important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's have next Khushi and Kriti. Khushi and Kriti, you there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, take over.
Hello, everyone. My name is Khushi, and that's my friend Kriti. We're 2 students from DPS Bangalore North, and we're working on a project called Menstruation, that is Men in Menstruation. We're very excited to present this in front of you. So I would like to start by quoting the very famous saying by Helen Keller, alone we do so little, but together we can do so much. This quote is very apt for our project as to challenging those social norms that are attached to menstruation. The combined effort of both men and women is very essential. When men and women come together and confront the social norms that have been causing so much suffering among women, we can make wonders. And through our sessions with the women in the factory, we learned that the budgeting in their household was done by the male head, and very little importance was given to the menstrual needs of the women. And when this happened, we realized that they resort to using menstrual products such as cloth with very poor quality, and this cloth wasn't even sanitized. We realized that apart from this practice, the habit of concealing the concept of menstruation has led to major problems such as serious health consequences, school dropouts, and just poor quality of life.
So these conversations were an eye-opener for us, as we realized that we not only need to encourage women
to be more open about the issues they face, but also including men in the conversation of menstruation, so that they understand and acknowledge the problems women face and also help solve these problems in their own capacity. Our project involves breaking a taboo that has existed since time immemorial. And this challenge was very evident during our conversation with some men, grown men, who refused to and, in fact, were embarrassed to talk about this topic. So, this feeling of embarrassment, this mindset, this whole stigma is what we want to tackle. We are really hopeful with that with the steps we take in this direction, that we help break this taboo attached to menstruation and help and sensitize society and make society more empathetic towards the problems women face. We want women to be more open about the problems they face and have a conversation about it with their family members. But most of all, our endeavor in the days to come is that both women as well as men are comfortable talking about this very natural process called menstruation. Thank you.
Great. Kriti and Kushi, very nice job. And this is a problem in your country as it is in ours. So this is a huge issue of educating men about women. And we are still facing big problems here relating to the treatment of women in this country. Often it is about people who are, like you say, of low income, which usually goes with lower education and more ignorance and a lot of sexual stereotyping that can be a serious problem. I'm curious, I see that what you want to do is provide women with low income women with pads, but what about the educational part with men? How are you approaching that?
So, sir, we have adopted two ways of approaching this topic, that is talking to men. One is directly and indirectly. Directly is talking to them face to face or through webinars, and indirectly is that we want to encourage women to include the men in their family with this topic. So we've provided pads to around 50 women so far, and when we go to do that, we're using this opportunity of interacting with them to educate them also about talking to men about menstruation. So earlier when we spoke to them about the topic, we were faced with a lot of resistance. They did not want to listen to the fact that they need to talk to their husbands or sons about menstruation. But when we spoke to them about the problem and how men can help them, they started opening up towards it. And what one lady said that really hit a chord with all of us and everyone in that meeting was that they wouldn't want their sisters or daughters to go through the same problems that they went through. And if anything had to be done, it should start from them, and they should not rely on anyone else to break this taboo. So we want to conduct case studies to really understand how everything goes down in different households.
Terrific. Thank you, Kushi. It is a big problem, as you know, and this is not, we have problems that we deal with every day, most recently due to the pandemic. And then we have problems that we've been dealing with for hundreds of years that we have still yet to resolve, and this is one of them. It's a very ambitious task, and I admire you for taking it on. It's a huge issue. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good. Let's have next Sadika. Sadika, take over.
Good morning, everyone. Before I say anything about my project, I want to start off with a statement. Education is every child's right. We all know this. But however, it is really sad to see the number of children worldwide who can't afford to go to school. And in India, this problem is especially large. In fact, 66% of India's population is rural. In rural areas, students can only afford low-income government schools, and these schools aren't equipped with the right technological resources or the right teachers. And with the situation already so serious, it has only gotten worse since the COVID-19 lockdown hit, and this resulted in all schools in India being closed. Many government schools have been facing severe mental health issues because they've gone so many months deprived of formal education. And I'm someone with a passion and a love for learning. So seeing this situation led me to start my project, E-Akshara. So E-Akshara is a social initiative through which I've been connecting with government school students through phones and teaching them the subject English with the help of a lot of volunteers. So the word Akshara is actually a name for the Hindu goddess of knowledge, Saraswati. And I've made the syllabus for this project myself, and I've also been working with a renowned educational NGO, Pratham, to further develop it. I initially wanted to teach the students on various subjects, but this was too much for me to handle right at the beginning. And since English is something that a lot of government school children in India face issues with, I decided to stick to this. So right now, my project is targeted towards these students who do not have online classes, but still have a phone with internet connection. But I'm currently raising money to provide hardware support to students who don't have any technological access at all. And I'm also working on developing an app that will feature my educational content in order to expand my project further. Seeing how students have, seeing how happy the students I've been teaching and their parents have been because of my project is the best part of this journey for me. Thank you.
You know, it is remarkable. Thank you, Sadika. It is remarkable how much the problems that this pandemic has created are affecting all of us in all countries around the world. We have the same problems here in the US of trying to figure out now how to start school, which normally starts in September, late August or September. And the schools are totally unprepared for how to create this. So congratulations. I mean, the idea of creating online classes is terrific. If you can solve the problem of how to give a social experience to students as well, you will have really solved an enormous problem.
Yeah,
so very good work. Thank you.
Good, thanks everyone. So, there were a number of people who also did well. Like there are Harshada and Maleha who got 1.1 thousand views, Dikshita, Kriti, 1.1 thousand, Aditi Chola, 1.1 thousand, and Nupur and Shruti, 1,000. So like all commendable job, and I'm sure there are more opportunities coming up for you to share your stories. So thanks very much, everyone. Ralph, I know we have taken more time than we should have taken,
okay.
But a few questions, and a lot of questions coming up, but a few winding, as we wind up. What is your favorite character in Toy Story? That's the question everybody's asking.
You have a couple of children, Manav, right?
Yeah.
Which one do you love the most? Exactly. So when you work for 3, 4, 5 years on a film with all these characters, you're like your children. And it's impossible. And I'm not saying this to be cute about it, but really to say it is so hard when animation is such a slow process. You spend so much time agonizing over every detail that goes into a film, that every moment of the film and every character in the film becomes particularly endearing. So I can't say that I have any one in particular that I love. They're all unique and special. Part of the fun of making that film is being able to hang out with these characters for 4 or 5 years and really get to know them.
Great. And a few more questions. Is Toy Story 5 coming up? Do you think so?
I left Pixar 23 years ago. I have no idea what is going on. It wouldn't surprise me, but anything can happen. But the good thing about Pixar, they had originally thought, I know, that they would only make 3 Toy Story films. But an idea came along that was so powerful that they felt that they should make a 4th one. So everything at Pixar, and what I admire about Pixar is everything is driven by story. And if there's a good story, they will make a film. If there's not a good story, they won't. A few years ago, I saw an editorial in one of the Hollywood newspapers saying, why is it that the rest of Hollywood can't make films as successfully as Pixar does? And the answer is that Pixar only focuses on one thing. Yes, they're famous for technology. They're famous for computer animation and all the beautiful imagery that they can create. But at the end of the day, the only thing that matters at Pixar is characters and story. And that's why they're successful.
Great, thanks, Ralph. Just personally, a last question. What has been the biggest high point in your career, and what has been the biggest failure? Or, I know we can go about failures, but just a wind-up question. What are the best things in your career, and what have been some of the failures?
Well, just like the question about have I ever thought about leaving animation, and I said every day I do. Every day there are failures. It's about how we respond to failures that makes the difference. And so the successes come out of failures. We talk a lot about experience. People have experience. You don't get experience from going to school. You get experience from making mistakes and learning from those mistakes. That's what experience is. So, you know, failures happen all the time, but there are small ones, and hopefully you can avoid the big ones. The other part of the question was the most important part of my career. Frankly, the most important of my career was when I first started working as a college student and learning how to program computers, creating my first computer image and standing back and looking at it and being amazed that this was possible, and imagining the future of what we could do with these kind of images. That really led me onto my career in working in computer animation. So it doesn't take much. A little germ of inspiration can lead to many years of work.
And any word of advice for the young future leaders?
Sure, make stuff. Making stuff, doing things, creating things, you know, whether it's a business, whether it's a film, whether it's a book, make stuff over and over again, and don't be afraid of what people will think about it. Just keep making stuff, and you will find that the creative process will grow within you, and you'll be able to master it and get better and better at it, no matter what area that you want to work in.
Thank you so much, Ralph. Thank you so much for your time today, and it's so nice of you to join us. It's always a pleasure.
Manav, always a pleasure to see you, and I'm inspired by what you're doing with 1M, 1B. It's terrific. The next step is to have 1M views on YouTube of some of these videos, and really launch some of these ideas into major efforts. That'd be great.
Yes, and I'll be taking your advice, Ralph. Thank you so much.
Manav, before Ralph leaves, if I can request everyone to switch on the cameras, it'll be nice to have a good shot with Ralph of everyone.
Yeah.
Sure.
Students, if you can all quickly switch on your cameras.
And I see you all are starting your day. I'm ending my day here. It is now almost 9 p.m. in the evening here. You are way ahead of me. You're 12 hours ahead of me. You are the future.
Great. You got the
All
picture,
right.
Safin?
Yeah. Yes.
Well, thank you, Safin, and thank you, Ralph. A big round of applause from all of us.
Thank you.
If you were in present, we would be giving a standing ovation. Thank you so much for inspiring all of us on your career journey, and hopefully our young future leaders here would follow your path as well.
I look forward to it. Thank you, and thanks for the opportunity to speak to him.
Thank you. Good night, Ralph.
Good night.